Okay, let's be real for a second. We're living in some seriously strange and disturbing political times. I mean, every single day you turn on the news, and it's something that feels completely wild, almost unbelievable. But what if all this chaos isn't actually random? What if there's a pattern hiding in plain sight?
So that's what we're going to dive into. We're tackling a massive question today. Why on earth are so many democracies all over the world suddenly taking a sharp turn towards authoritarianism? It feels like a global trend, and the source material we're looking at today offers a really compelling and kind of chilling explanation.
And look, this isn't just happening in one or two countries. We are seeing this exact same pattern pop up everywhere, from the United States and Italy all the way to Brazil and India. There's a new style of authoritarian leadership on the rise, and it's happening across the globe. This is a worldwide phenomenon, and that means it needs a worldwide explanation. Right, so let's start our investigation into this puzzling political turn. The source we're drawing from argues that even though it all looks like total chaos on the surface, there's actually an underlying logic, an order to what's happening. And this is where it gets really fascinating. The main suspect in our investigation isn't a political party or a specific leader or even some grand ideology. No, it's the economic system that's been running the world for the last 50 years. So, to really solve this puzzle, we've got to unpack the main concept at its heart. Neoliberalism. What is it really, and how does it actually work? Okay, so in a nutshell, neoliberalism isn't just about free markets. It's way bigger than that. It's a whole new phase of capitalism that basically rewrote the rules for everything, not just the economy, but for society itself. You can think of it as the operating system that's been running in the background of our world ever since the 1970s. And the single most important feature of this new operating system is something called financialization. This is the key. It basically means that finance, banks, hedge funds, the stock market, became the dominant force in everything, shaping corporate decisions, public policy, and even our personal lives through things like mortgages and student debt. And this chart really just shows you the sheer scale of that takeover. Back in the post-war years, the financial sector made up about 10% of all corporate profits in the US. But by 2002, boom, look at that jump to 41%. Finance wasn't just a part of the economy anymore. In a lot of ways, it was the economy. And then, in 2008, the whole system came crashing down. The shock was so massive that even its biggest cheerleader, the former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan, had to admit in public that his entire worldview, the core ideology of the system, had failed. It was the moment the mask was ripped off for everyone to see. That crash created a massive aftershock. The 2008 financial crisis, it wasn't just an economic event. It was a political earthquake. And the fallout from that earthquake is what we are all still living through today. Now, a lot of people at the time thought 2008 would be the end of neoliberalism, a crisis of the system. But our source makes a really critical distinction. It wasn't. It was a crisis within the system. The machine broke down, sure, but it was patched back together. And in doing so, all its flaws were exposed, while paradoxically making it even more radical and powerful. How? Well, by doing exactly this. The government stepped in on a scale we'd never seen before, but not to help regular people. It basically created a two-tiered system: socialism for the bankers with massive bailouts and basically free money. And for everyone else, well, they got harsh capitalism with austerity. That means painful cuts to public services and higher taxes. This move saved the financial system, but it absolutely poisoned our politics. And that brings us right to the political fallout. Because while the economic system was being rescued by the state, the very foundations of our democracy were being hollowed out from the inside. Just think about how this has shifted. Under neoliberalism, real power over the economy has been systematically moved away from institutions that we can actually vote for, like our parliaments and governments, to ones we can't. The huge decisions about our economies are now made by so-called independent central banks, by global financial markets, and by transnational organizations. Sure, democracy still exists on paper, but the space for making real choices has gotten smaller and smaller. So what's the result? Well, this created a huge group of people that our source calls the economic losers. The working class lost its power, good, skilled jobs disappeared, and job security became a relic of the past. Even the middle class suddenly found itself swimming in debt, anxious about the future, and unable to promise their kids a better life. And here is the political genius and tragedy of it all. With the real economic power levers now out of reach for voters, all that anger and resentment had to go somewhere. So it was masterfully redirected. Instead of blaming the economic system itself, people were encouraged to blame immigrants, minorities, and foreign countries for all their problems. So now we get to the absolute heart of the argument. Our source boils this whole dynamic down into three interlocking paradoxes that perfectly explain how neoliberalism accidentally created the very authoritarianism that now threatens its existence. Okay, first up, the economic paradox. Neoliberalism created the most favorable conditions for big money in modern history. I'm talking weak unions, low taxes, deregulation, the whole shebang. And yet, it completely failed to produce stable, long-term growth. Instead, all it generated were massive bubbles, spectacular crashes, and deeper instability. Second, we have the political paradox. The system stripped away the real power from democracy, leaving millions of people feeling completely powerless and ignored. This loss of faith in the system created the perfect opening for populist, anti-establishment leaders to storm onto the scene, promising to smash the corrupt elite and give power back to the people. And this leads us to the final and maybe the most twisted paradox of all, the authoritarian paradox. These new leaders get elected by channeling all that anger from the economic losers. But once they get into power, what's the first thing they do? They push an even more extreme, more radical version of neoliberalism. More tax cuts for the wealthy, more deregulation, policies that directly hurt the very people who voted for them. So you see the trap here. It's a vicious cycle. These authoritarian leaders can't actually fix the problems because their policies just make everything worse. And this just deepens the frustration, ramps up the anger, and creates an even more fertile breeding ground for extremist, far-right politics to grow and fester. Which leaves us with a final, deeply unsettling question. The system is broken, and the leaders who promise to save it are only breaking it further. If this cycle just keeps going, what's the end game? What comes after this authoritarian turn? And that is something for all of us to really think about.